So we'll open the meeting at 7:33. And Ryan, you have that little blurb, right? For digital recording?
Yep. Someone's got feedback, so we'll have to have people mute. Just 1 second while I call this up. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Hubbardston Capital Planning Improvement Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town website. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via Zoom. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website a comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Welcome, Katie, and welcome, Bob. Thanks for coming. Bob, what we wanted to talk about, we're finalizing our capital plan, and there's a couple of things in the fire department list that we just wanted to hear sort of from you and get a better sense of what some of the priorities are this year versus what can be put till next year. Namely, turnout gear. Is that something that needs to be done this year? What is the replacement cycle for these? How many? I think we bought a bunch a couple years ago. So what proportion are done every year? Also the brush truck. How essential is it that we have it this year? What kind of equipment do you think we need? And how does that truck differ from the big Army truck that's also used as a brush truck? So kind of some information for us to make a better decision. So I'll put the floor to you, Bob. I think Bob's still muted.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out phone and video.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I got a new webcam and I was fiddling with it, but I guess I got no video and no audio, so I'm patched in through the phone line.
Good enough. Were you able to hear what I said, Bob?
I caught part of it as I was scrambling to dial in a couple of times. So
okay.
You said something about wanting to know the difference between the pickup car 2 versus the military truck.
Yeah, well, that was sort of part of it. So we're trying to make some final recommendations for the Board of Selectmen regarding capital purchases for this year, since money is looking a little tight this year. So our questions in the fire department budget are exactly what you had heard was, the brush truck. What are the things we need from it this year? What kind of things we need on the truck? How does that differ from the Army truck, which I know is used as a brush truck? Also the turnout gear, is that, how important is it to have it this year versus next year versus the year after? What's kind of cycle are those things on? And also, I guess we'll just start there.
All right, so the pickup, which we call Car 2, it's a multi-purpose vehicle. It's not just for brush purposes. That's one of the main capabilities. It's fit with a 175-gallon water tank and a pump from springtime until the fall. And then in the wintertime, we use it for plowing. The fire station, some of the main water holes in town, as long as we can keep up with it. But as soon as we get a lot of snow, we try to keep a few of them, as many open as possible. And then we also assist the highway when they're busy. In bigger storms, that truck's used to plow out. When we plow the fire station, we'll also go down to the Slade building and do that parking lot for the police to keep that open. And then sometimes when you get into those really bad 2 feet of snow situations, we'll use that vehicle to assist them with intersections and stuff like that. Also, bad storms, that vehicle will go with a plow during the height of a storm or the next day. If there's a medical call, the pickup truck will go out if we have the staffing, because sometimes you get 16 inches of snow, even though main ambulance has four-wheel drive. If there's too much snow, we're not going to be able to get access to the driveways. So it's used for that also. And then that's as you know, we have two stations, and when there's a fire call, that vehicle is used to transport the on-duty crew from 48 Gardner Road down to the Main Street station. And then the last, there's a lot of other things it does. The main thing is for mutual aid fires, the on-duty crew, during the week, it's myself and two others. On the weekend, it's two. They'll take that vehicle down the other station, get on the fire apparatus, and then the two full-time guys will go out and respond to whatever area of town is having the fire. And then if we have a couple call guys that come back, they'll grab this vehicle and they will go on scene. That way it'll give us 3 or 4 guys, which gives you a full complement for the engine company. So there's a lot of things that vehicle does, not just brush fires. As far as, the military truck, like I said, it's got 800 gallons of water on it. It's a big vehicle. It's great to have, but the size of it does limit how much off-road you can get with it. So these smaller paths and stuff like that, a pickup truck with some water on it makes it a lot more maneuverable into the woods. So the vehicle, it's an 07. It's a Ford F-250. Cab corners and the body starting to rot away. This past summer, we had $3,300 worth of repairs in one week when it was out for various items, from transmission lines rotted out to brakes and brake assemblies that were rotted out that had to be repaired, and a lot of front-end issues. So out of all the vehicles that we have, this vehicle on a daily use gets used more than any of the other vehicles that we have.
Fair enough. Can you address the turnout gear a little bit on the replacement cycle of that?
Yeah. Turnout gear, NFPA states that after 10 years, your turnout gear is supposed to be out of service. No matter what the condition is, after 10 years, just due to wear and tear and collection of carcinogens, it's supposed to be taken out of service. We currently, a few years ago, everybody has gear that it meets the NFPA standard. What I was trying to do with this other set of gear was to get sets for the people that show up the most, because what happens is, for most departments now, the standard is if you go to any fire at all or incident and your gear is soiled, it needs to be laundered. We don't have a washing machine here with that capability. You need a special washer and dryer to handle that gear. So we have to send it out, which can take 3 to 5 days turnaround. Meanwhile, that firefighter's gear, or several firefighters, would not have gear to go to another incident while their gear is being washed. So this was to get them a second set of gear so that when their other turnout gear was soiled and needed to be sent out for cleaning, they would still be in service.
Go ahead, Bill. Bill, you're still muted.
Sorry.
There you
go. I was muted. Would it be more advisable to buy a heavy-duty washing and drying machine than replacing the gear for the short term?
Those are several thousands of dollars, but also on top of that, my understanding is, since we don't have municipal water, that if you have a washer and dryer, you can't just dump that into a septic tank, a leach field. So it needs to go into, it's not as simple as just getting a washer and dryer. It would have to be, for us, dumped into a holding tank, which then would have to be pumped out.
Right.
And then you have to also make sure you have the water supply And I don't know if it has to have a certain volume that comes in to support the washer. So there's some things there that, especially when it comes to the being tied into a leach field, I don't believe you can just dump that into a standardized leach field. So
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So what's the value of the turnout gear that you're asking for?
I haven't. It's been, I think, a year and a half, 2 years since we got a quote, but just the pants and the coat would run around anywhere from $2,200 to $2,400 a set.
Okay. So I do these tight tanks all the time, and the tight tanks value is $12,000 to $15,000, and it would be, it would have to be located at the fire station because we wouldn't want to locate it at the rental location. So I think what he's asking for is not an unreasonable ask.
Yeah, then if it was going to be at the other station, the water there is it's horrible. It's your classic Hubbardston water. There's a ton of iron in that, and the filtration system there has been obsolete for many years now. So,
well, I think you're probably looking at a $15,000 to $20,000, including the washing system, cost versus the cost of just getting supplemental gear for the short term.
Yeah.
Bob, approximately how much does it cost to send the gear out to get laundered after every incident?
I want to say I think it's around like $40 a set.
So on a typical, so this is only a fire that it has to be, not a car accident or heavy rescue or something. Is that right?
Yeah. So any fire or hazmat where there was some sort of contaminants. I mean, it used to be, the badge of honor. Your gear was dirty. The more dirtier it was, it showed that you had the more experience. And now that's just all that is cancer-causing material that's on your gear. And the standard for most moving towards it is that your gear, if it gets soiled whatsoever, you go to a car fire. Even now, just because of the logistics of getting the gear there and the person being out, being out of service for a couple of days, if they go to a car fire, their gear wouldn't be washed. One, just because of the cost, and it's minor. But a lot of departments are moving. That gear and that firefighter is out of service until the gear's washed and the guy comes back to the station and takes a shower. So that's the way the fire service is moving. So a lot of the times these minor incidences where if you actually did have a washer and dryer and it may even another set of gear, you would wash that gear right off the bat. It would be a no-brainer. But for us, with only one set of gear, no washer and dryer, and the downtime, there's times we have to cut corners because we just don't have that capability.
But it's still probably several $100s for every incident to get these things washed, sending out at least.
You would, yes. But like I said, we don't do it. It's going to be, we have a structure fire and somebody's gear gets soiled from that. It's going to go out. We're going to make arrangements. But there's plenty of other times where we probably should be washing it and we just don't have the capability to do that just because of the limitations and the amount of gear we have and all that. So
it sounds like a washing system is probably in the cards in the future sometime, I would think.
It should be.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know where we would put it.
But Mike, the cost benefit analysis is like more than a decade. I mean, it's you're talking 20 grand plus for a holding tank and the washing machine and everything else in-house. You'd have to do the water treatment.
Right.
And, if they're spending hundreds of dollars an incident, we have 10 incidents a year, the payback really isn't there until such time as we get a real station.
Right. Well, right. No, I think it would be something, what I mean in the future, it'd be something in a station that we build. I wouldn't add it to the current, the current property.
Agreed.
Makes perfect sense. Quick question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Just looking at the cost that you had mentioned earlier, I think you said between $2,200 and $2,400 per gear. And based on the request that you put out, which is, I think I saw it was 17,000. That's between 6 and 7 pieces, units. Is that correct? Is that the request?
Yeah, we could probably squeeze maybe one more set out of that, maybe get to 7 or to the 8. And that would be, it wouldn't be, we have 13 current members on the department, so not all of them would get them. It would be the full-time guys would get a second set, and then a couple of the call guys that show up on a regular basis. You know, because if I went with the 13, that would drive it up to the 31,000 I'd be looking for. So, yeah, the 22 times the 7, yeah. So I'm basically looking to get the full-time staff and then a couple of the call guys that show up on a regular basis gear, so that you know, they're not out for any considerable time if they actually have to have their gear laundered.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Anything
Welcome.
else for Bob from anyone?
Chief, just real quick, if you could address the radios, and then the next 5 years, you have the fire truck and the ambulance. I know that's a longer conversation, but why you placed them, where you placed them on the capital plan, so we can do the longer term stuff.
Yeah, the radios, I did actually hear back from the director of the rec, Mike Moriarty. He said they did not get the grant funding for those radios, but he was going to try again in the future. April was actually, he was going to put in for funding for that again. So there is a possibility that that could get funded that way. I was looking for funding for portable radios. These are radios that we take with us on every call, medicals, fires, our safety line, communications. For each member of the department gets issued one of them. So we're looking to replace some of them. The last time we had any replaced was in 2006. So they're getting fairly old, and looking just start swapping some of them out. But there is a
Would this
potential
ask
that doesn't
cover?
get
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
if it's funded this year through the capital plan, there might be some hope that the rec will be able to get some grant funding.
Would this ask cover all the radios you have, all the portable radios, or only a portion?
I would only cover a portion.
Okay. And then as far as, like Ryan said, it's probably a bigger discussion for a different time, but ambulance replacement and fire truck replacement, what are your thoughts about the necessity of having it, you know, in the next couple of years, or is that something, you know, we've had a couple of new trucks over the last, you know, 5 to 7 years. What's the possibility of moving that out even further, and why do you need a new fire truck, and what is it replacing?
Yeah, I mean, engine 2 is our tanker. It holds 2,500 gallons of water. So typically how we run is engine 1 is our first due engine out the door. It arrives on scene. It has 1,000 gallons of water on it. And engine 2 will come in as the second piece with 2,500 gallons, giving us 3,500 gallons of water. Initial lines going in, running at 175 to 225 gallons a minute. If you just have that 1,000 gallons, it doesn't last very long. So, and we don't have a hydrant system, so you have to have that initial water on scene to give us time to set up for us to lay our 5-inch line to the closest water supply. So engine 2 is the 2001 KME, so it's 19 years old. It's gone in for recent repairs, and the shop basically said there's some stress cracks that aren't a exact worry right now, but in the next couple of years, just because of the weather in New England, the salt, the grime that gets up in there, it's the cage that basically holds the tank in place to the body, to the frame of the truck, is starting to show its age. And they never gave me a price, but it's a pricey fix to lift that tank out and repair it. So that's why I actually moved it down a year, was based on their recommendation, because I know if you I know you'd remember, Mike, but when we went to get the money for engine 4 to do a kind of like a modified rehab, once they got into it, they realized that the frame underneath was rotted, and basically it was going to cost tens of thousands of dollars more, and it could be even more than that, because once you get into a project like that and you start peeling back the layers, you tend to find things that are wrong, that need to be fixed. And I would hate to, wait and have a situation where one day we find out, it goes to the shop for something, and they're like, the truck's out of service until it gets repaired, because that's a key piece of equipment for us to have that water on scene initially. So
Yeah.
that's why I bumped it back a year instead of pushing it out.
I do remember that. The cost to fix the truck was like more than the truck was worth.
Yeah, and that's where they
Gotcha.
came back, because I think we had asked for around $50,000 to basically go through it mechanically and make sure that braking system and do some repairs on it to make sure that it was roadworthy for another 3 to 4 years. And they came back and found that the frame was rotted out, and it would be a ridiculous amount of money to put into a truck that age. So I don't want to find ourselves in a situation like that where 3, 4 years from now we go to push the truck and it goes in for a repair, and they're just like, yeah, you need to dump $150,000 into a 23-year-old truck. It just doesn't make any sense.
What's the typical, Bob, what's the typical truck replacement cycle for, if you know, for like a Worcester or a Leominster? I mean, clearly bigger departments that are, using trucks more often. What is a typical replacement cycle on their end?
I don't know exactly. I mean, there's some departments out there. I know one of the guys that used to be here, he went down to Myrtle Beach, and down there, I don't even think they purchase the trucks. I think they lease them, and they rotate them out every 5 or 7 years or something like that. Of course, those vehicles, they get a lot more mileage on them. For us, I believe the NFPA their recommendations after 20 years, the truck's supposed to go into a reserve role and not be a frontline piece. And then I believe it's after 25 years, it's supposed to be taken out of service. Now, there's departments all over the country that don't follow that because, same problems we have, the funding. You just don't have the funding for it. So we start getting into that between 21 and 22 years, you're starting to push it. And when you get to the 24, 25, you're really starting to push it with these vehicles. Just because of the wear and tear and basically the weather and the salt here just breaks them down.
Bob, is there any utility for, like you said, like Myrtle Beach, for example, no salt, no nothing down there, then they get heavier use than us. Is there any utility for significant savings for getting a truck, like they turn it in 5 years and we purchase it for our use? Or is that those trucks generally not worth it at that point?
Well, there were something, the biggest thing we have, is the station, the constraints of the station. So a lot of departments don't, especially down there, when you have funding where you can rotate trucks out every 7 years, you're running that out of a newer station with 12-foot doors and huge bays. And so you'd want to have to find a truck that met your requirements, but also would be capable of fitting into the station.
But should we, in the ideal world, have a new bay, let's say, that would be, you think that's something that we could look at in the future, or you would not go down that road with, 5-year-old lease trucks?
I'd say is, a possibility, but like finding what you want for your specs, it'd be difficult, and that's anything used, but it's definitely could be a possibility. Something like Myrtle Beach, like that example I used, they're not going to have a truck also with 2,500 gallons of water on it because
Right.
they're running a hydrant system. Their truck's going to have 500 gallons of water, 750 tops. So, tankers are usually in a more rural setting. You'd be even less likely to find something like that. But I'm not saying it's impossible.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thanks, Bob. Anybody else have any questions for Chief Hayes before he goes? No? All right.
Thanks for your time, Chief.
Thanks,
All right,
Bob.
thank you.
All
Have a
right.
good night.
Take care. All right, Ryan, we have Dennis coming in next, right?
Yeah, he was here and then oh, there he is. All right, Chief's in the room.
Dennis, good evening. How are you?
He's muted.
I'm here. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, how are you, Mike?
I'm doing well.
Great.
So thanks for coming. The Capital Planning Committee is just reviewing all the capital requests for this year and wanted to just hear from our major department heads about their big funding requests and just some rationale behind it. Funding is a little bit short this year, so we have to make a couple decisions about what we can put this year and maybe move to next year or so. So I think the big things on the list were a cruiser replacement and handguns, if I remember correctly, right?
No, handguns were last year.
That was last year, excuse me. So really it's just the cruiser replacement and we had some camera equipment.
Right.
So if you can just give us a little rundown on those things and why you see necessity for those.
Sure. So I have good news. We did receive a burn grant for $22,600, which will pay for the components of the vehicle cameras and storage server, which is slated on the capital plan at $15,000, which we will not need any of that money with the exception of maybe installation costs of the system, which probably be anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500, wild guess. So the grant was able to trim off some of that money, a big portion of that money. And the rest of the grant, we plan on trying to upgrade our portables. I listened to some of what Bob had to say about their portable issues, and we have the same issues, and we're going to need to upgrade them. One of the questions and one of the problems I've had, and I know Ryan has had with the dispatch center, is we don't get a capital plan from them. So it's hard for me to give to speculate what capital I need, particularly when it comes to communication, when I don't know what they're putting in for, what type of grants they're putting in for. I know they were putting in for a grant this year. I guess he told them he's going to try again next year, but it's hard for us to plan our capital when it comes to the dispatch center when they don't divulge to us what their capital plans are. So that's kind of been a little bit of an aggravant to me trying to plan, but we do have some money left over to try to upgrade some of our portables, and we'll look at other options as far as the rest of the money, which is about $8,000 will be left over in the grant to possibly get some portables to improve communication ability among patrol officers. The car purchase, it's a cyclical purchase. It's a police car, so they wear out. Currently, we have 4 cars, not counting the car that I utilize. The car we're looking to replace currently has 93,877 miles, and it is a 2016 SUV. And it's generally, the life cycle is generally 100,000, 4 years old. We start running into some major repair problems. We're kind of dealing with that with this particular car now with different electronics. We just have to replace a heater motor and some other things. So it starts to get costly keeping that vehicle on the road. Car 2 has more mileage, 98,414, but we're not slating to replace that because it got a new engine back in May or June because of an issue with it. So that's going to stay in service. Car 3 has 34,891, and our newest car 4 has 15,000. So other than car 1, which has been kind of the breakdown issue, and consequently, when it breaks down, it puts more mileage on the other cars. The other cars are running pretty good with the exception of some minor things in car 2, because the rest of car 2 is still 4 years old. So getting a price from MHQ, which is a certified Plymouth County bid pricing dealer, with complete upfit. The vehicle alone is $34,287, and the upfit costs for all the lights and sirens and prisoner modules, etc., is $15,550 for a total of $49,837. I got information from MHQ the other day that they estimate a trade-in of our old car 1 to be in the range of $4,300 to $4,800, so that would come off of that price.
Okay. And then moving forward into the next couple of years, I think we have Ryan, would you be able to bring that back up again, that capital plan? So Dennis, we have this year to replace that car, which is aging, and then we skip a year, and then we have 2 years, 2 years where there's like a car replacement each year. So that would be the other 2 cars then, if I'm correct.
Right, so that year skip will be stretching it for car 2, but I think we can make it, particularly because of the engine replacement. Then that would be replaced. The 55,000 is an estimate for that replacement. And then car 3 or 4, probably car 3 would be replaced at the 57.5 price tag in 3 years.
Okay. And then how much of a reprieve would we have moving forward? Another, we'd have 2 or 3 years off and then have to go back into the cycle?
So I would say the most we would get off is 1 year, because car 4 at 15,000 miles now, it's about it's not quite a year old. It was put in service like last January or February. So one thing, by adding the cruiser we did, we're seeing less. We used to see 25 to 30,000 miles per year on front line. Now it's anywhere from 20, 22. So we're able to get more time out of them. So it's very conceivable that after that 57.5, we could skip that year, and then we'd probably have to go into a cycle of replacing that car. And then my car is a 16, so that would probably be in consideration somewhere down the line beyond the chart that's on the screen right now.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dennis. Any further questions for Dennis from anyone? Nope. All right. Thanks, Dennis.
Perfect.
I think we got the information we needed.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for your time, Chief.
Ryan, was Travis supposed to be here at 8:15 or 8:30?
He's actually here if you
Okay.
want to just jump right in.
Absolutely.
He's on this phone.
Travis,
Hi, everyone.
how you doing?
Good yourself.
Good. So thanks for coming. We had the 3 major department heads come in tonight just to discuss their capital request and kind of their rationale behind them, so we can make a better decision about what's going on. So that's why we're here. Ryan, I don't know if you can put the spreadsheet back up. It'd be great.
Sorry, I didn't hear a lot of that somehow or another. There was a lot of scrambling going on.
Oh, we're having the department heads come in tonight just to go over the capital request, and so we can have a better understanding of what's going on. And money's a little bit tight this year, as it is every year, but wanted to hear about, the major thing was the mini excavator, and just some rationale behind that, and what that looks like, and what kind of machine it is, and how do you think it's going to benefit you now versus sometime in the future. So I'll give the floor to you.
Sure. We went with the used mini. We don't have a specific name brand. We usually just look to see which one will best fit the department for the price we have. We usually work and talk with Brookside Equipment, and they usually help us out there. We usually have to put out the bid anyways because it has to be procured. And for going forward, we're looking for one with a longer stick, which will help it get into our trucks. But the meaning of having the mini is the more versatile that it can be for us working on the roads and in tighter places. Right now we use a 2007 Case backhoe, and I had shown Charles a picture of it. We had an incident where we needed it to undo a beaver plug both culverts underneath New Westminster Road. And in order for it to get the real power of it, it needed to be straight on, and being that way, it took up 3/4 of the road. As with a mini excavator, I'd be able to have it, it'd be only possibly in 1/4 of one lane and be able to do the job. And not only that, with having the mini, it would be rubber tracked, so we'd be able to drive it on the road and not have any issues with it, damaging the road. We've been doing a lot of ditch work, and we've had to use the backhoe, which takes a lot of time, and having a small department, time is money. So, and we don't have much of time. So, by using the mini, I'm able to have a guy in a truck and a guy in the excavator and be able to go straight up the road and make a ditch line. And with the ditching bucket that would be on the excavator that we don't have on the backhoe, would give us a much nicer curb appeal. They would do the job much better at a faster rate, and the excavator would be able to dig and just turn and be able to put it in the truck and then move forward in the same path. It's a lot of safety involved because I'm not out into traffic. We've had complaints from being out in the road and holding up traffic at times. And we've also, with the back, we use more people to get the job done because of it not being able to get in spots we needed to get into. So it actually puts a lot of stress on that one backhoe that we have, that we bought used, and it wasn't bought new. So we still have uses for the backhoe. It's just that a lot of the ditching work that we do through town and putting in culvert pipes, the mini excavator is by far a better fit and a more efficient piece of equipment to have.
Okay. What's the status of our other equipment down at the DPW now? Everything is working okay? Do you see any?
Yep.
I know you have a dump truck on here for a couple of years, but do you see any needs coming up within the next year that may impact our capital plan moving forward?
I honestly, at the time, unless something catastrophic happened, but we're pretty much up on through maintenance on them. Our equipment's looking pretty good. We have a 7 backhoe, a 15 2015 John Deere loader. That one we did buy new. Everything else other than the recent trucks like the 15 and the 18 Freightliner, the 12 Freight seems to be going pretty good. The only one that was the 04 Mac, which is on the docket, which has cost us some money because it's had some rust issues with it, and it's 16 years old. It's pretty long for a piece of equipment in salt. But just this year, we had a pretty bad catastrophic failure with the side dump on it, where the piston come through the side of the body because of all the rust, and the plow frame on the front from years of using it in our roads had done some damage to it. So I've had to send it to Hub Equipment to redo the front plow frame and rebuild the side dump system on the Mac itself. So it was quite expensive, and but we needed it to be in service for this plowing season, and it's a truck we use year round anyway, so had to do it.
Okay. Thanks, Travis. Any questions for Travis?
Yeah, Travis, you have a trailer already to move the Mini,
Yes.
and it's rated for it?
Yes.
Okay.
Travis, Francois here. Quick question on the mini excavator. On an average a year, how often do you have to use it? Trying to come up with a justification. So if we were asked the question as to what makes it a favorable item.
Quite honestly, we would use it, if it had to come to, depending on, frost in the ground, we would use it up until that point. Because we do a lot of road work and a lot of replacing culverts and digging out trenches, and that's mostly, and that's a big asset for doing that.
Gotcha.
It's by far a time saver and safety issue. Of getting that would be a better alternative than what we're using now, which is the backhoe, which is putting strain on the arm of that.
Gotcha.
Travis, this is Brian. Just if you could, I know the committee understands the 04 Mac dump truck replacement in a couple of years pretty well. The idea that the brush mowers would be getting old in a few years, but some of the building improvements, and I know that are on here, I know some of it was done with the consultant. So looking to see the immediacy of those needs, and I'm talking specifically about replacing the septic system, the garage roof, and the exhaust mitigation system. What your opinion is on that, or what we would need to do to assess whether or not those are priorities?
The mitigation system, I know the fire station was in the midst of doing all that because of all the COs from the vehicles being put into the area. So I find that important for the workers that I have. The roof has been leaking. At times we have a consistent drip at one spot. It's been there for years. We've had a roof company come up and look at it, and they can't seem to find the leak. So we get a drip every so often once it rains. So obviously that's in need of repair. As for the septic, I would more or less probably see having it pumped, and in the meantime see what they assess it. Then I personally don't think that the septic system would need it, but I'm not a septic person, so it seems to be working fine. We've had it pumped before and it was fine then. So not saying not to have it on the list, but I don't see it as being something before the roof or anything like that, the mitigation system.
And that roof quote, is that an exact quote, or was that tabulation by the UMass group?
It might have been one that I had gotten, but that was quite a few years ago that has been on there. So I would have to get another quote to update that number.
Thank you.
Thanks, Travis.
Oh, anytime. Have a good night.
Take care.
Thanks, Travis.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess first order of business, then we go through this year's capital plan and come up with some savings. I mean, clearly we are saving on the camera system. I'm glad that Dennis was able to get a grant for that. So that's good. But I think it still comes down to, if I remember the numbers, it's going to come down to the excavator and the turnout gear. Wasn't that kind of what we were
Or the
looking at?
pickup truck?
The pickup truck, that's right.
Yeah, so I can, just to refresh the group, I can show you the numbers again. So if you're talking FY '22, we have 312,000 in free cash, which is what we normally use to fund capital. We'd like to reserve 100 for the operating budget and then 100 for the following year to fund the next year's operating budget. So that's a reserve of 200,000, which is a policy and political decision that can be adjusted, of course. And then that leaves you with 112,000. There's also 54,000 in your capital stabilization reserve fund, which, so if you max that out, you'd be at, if you use the whole stabilization fund, which I suppose there would be a justification for that in a pandemic year or a low revenue year. But if you used it all, then you'd have 165, 170,000 to play with. So the total ask this year is, if you move the mitigation system to next year, which you had already mentioned doing, and funded everything that was asked for tonight, is 168,000. So if I was to give you a prudent recommendation, I would maybe dip a little bit into that free cash reserve and a little bit into the capital stabilization. So maybe you could pull 30 to 40,000 from there. So you're looking at somewhere between 120 and 150,000 that you could eke out in capital. And that's if, and it's a big if, we don't have overages and snow and ice that we need to cover with free cash, and there isn't some catastrophic revenue hit, which is, it's more likely this year than it has been in a long time. So conservatively, you have 112,000. On the high end, you'd have 160,000. And this is the type of year to be more conservative. So given the items that you have, if you were going to be conservative this year, you'd have to cut out, one of the big ticket items, or take out the radios and the turnout gear, which would leave you with just the three big items, some type of configuration like that. And I'll leave you to debate it, but that's sort of the financial situation. There won't be much of an appetite to use everything. So there's going to have to be a decision here.
Yeah, I think we definitely stay conservative. You don't know what the budgets are going to look like from the state moving forward with, this pandemic's continuing at least for another 6 months at the level it's at now. Thoughts, anyone?
Well, the excavator, I think it's something that you get used, and certainly could be a labor savings. I think the department could get by another year without it. We need the police cruiser, and the truck they want to replace, the 2007 Ford. It seems like it's only going to get worse obviously get worse longer they use it, and seems like they do get plenty of use out of that vehicle.
Yeah. If I look at the use of a mini excavator, you have an alternative. It's not the ideal alternative, and it has costs associated with it from an operational perspective. However, I do also feel that it is certainly something that potentially could be moved to a future year. That would be my my first choice in terms of thinking about putting it somewhere else. I am concerned about the turnout gear because of the liability that that imposes should somebody come back and say that by not having done so, the town has now potentially, and I don't know if what the issues are or if there are any issues regarding liability for not doing this here in a timely manner. So I want to be aware of that when we're looking at this here. So the only item that I really think is, for me at least, is a fairly clear proposition for us to move to a future year would be item on line 5, which is the mini excavator right now.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of agree with that, Francois. I mean, you know, the fire department pickup truck, it sounds like that's their, I mean, they're using that every day, multiple times a day to transfer between stations. And so we want something that is going to be reliable for them.
Right.
So I see that. We need the police car that needs to be replaced. That's used all the time. That's on a replacement schedule. You know, we could remove the radios. Like Bob said, they were going to apply for a grant again.
Yep.
So we could remove them from the capital plan and you know, if they find out in April that you know, sometime in the summer they don't get it, I mean, there might be some other options for us at that time. So I think I would agree with maybe moving the excavator to next year.
And the portable radios too. That brings up $55,000. Brings it down by 55K.
Right. Yeah.
The other question I had, and I mean, I did not quite understand if they did receive some grants for the vehicle camera and storage vehicle cameras, that's actually not going to be utilized, Ryan, from prior year. Did I misunderstand that in terms of what Chief Perone said?
So what happened was the vehicle cameras and storage server. So we were going to buy the cameras and then the storage server in 22.
Mhm.
Because of the climate with police and liability and a lot of different concerns, we moved that up this year in the fall and voted for that.
Mhm.
So if you see here in FY21, the full 15,000 is there. What happened was Chief Perrin got a grant, so we're not going to need most of that money. So what he's saying is that money will turn into free cash for next year, which
Gotcha.
really, for your purposes, helps fund 23, not 22. But
Not
it's
22. That's why I was trying to find out whether or not this could be leveraged for 22, but it cannot.
yeah. So guys like me get excited because I'm trying to look 2-3 years ahead. But in terms of your immediate decision, it's a good news story, but not helpful for the 22 decision.
Okay. So Michael, I think at least my position now has increased from the 45 to the actual 55 when it as the fire department's portable radios. I think that's certainly areas that we have potential wiggle room here, given the difficulties from a budget perspective. What would that bring the budget to if we take those two items out, Ryan? What would be the final number as a result of that?
That would bring, so assuming you push them 1 year, that would
Yeah.
bring 22 to 113.5 and 23 to 309.5.
I know it's kicking the can down the road, but at least for this year, we're really working on a conservative manner and still getting the largest items that we need that are required, right?
Yes.
Yes.
What I would advise this committee is basically by pushing 2 DPW items. One thing you will be doing to the DPW is they'll have a significant number of requests next year if the roof is necessary next year and you fund the mitigation system and you do the mini excavator, followed by a year of a new dump truck and then maybe a new vehicle for Travis, which is needed. That does have to be replaced soon. You're putting a lot of requests into the DPW for those 2 years.
Clearly
And-
understand that.
Ryan, how does it look if we move the mitigation system to this year?
That puts it around 140.
And And do we know, is that quote for the mitigation, is that a current quote? Because we know what happened with the fire station.
Yeah, I'm real hesitant to speak out of turn here, but it seems like a more straightforward system for the DPW garage, but I thought that before, so I'm not confident in that number.
Would you be comfortable with 140, or is that still too much of a reach for this year?
So if it was just my opinion, which I try not to do, as you know, Mike, I would fund the 3 big projects as opposed to putting in a mitigation system and doing 140. I'd
Okay.
rather get the excavator in there somehow than the mitigation system. So,
Okay.
but that's just my recommendation. It just makes everything more efficient and more safe for our traffic and workers, et cetera. So I can sell that better, but that's just preference.
But the mitigation system is an OSHA requirement, so it's a health, safety, and welfare kind of thing. It's pretty important.
Bill, I
Yes.
imagine all your new buildings have mitigation systems in them when you build them, correct?
Absolutely, they can't not.
We only don't have one because we don't have one.
Right.
Otherwise, we would need it.
I mean, the diesel fumes spew carcinogens into the air and they linger, and therefore it's a hazard to the workers unless they're able to open the doors, and they can't open the doors in the middle of winter when it's really cold and they're mountain plows and things like that. So it is, it's an issue.
Yeah.
It's a health, safety, and welfare issue. The mini excavator is an operational issue as well as, it makes things flow smoother for our residents, but I'm inclined to go to health, safety, and welfare over expediency.
Same here.
Yeah. I mean, if we keep the mitigation system in this year, that does lessen the load next year a little bit. We have a little bit of wiggle room this year.
Well,
get
I
this number.
think, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's going to help towards morale.
Yes.
It's going to show that we care. I mean, the roof is a big deal too. I can't see how that roof is $100,000, to be honest with you, but I'm not a roofer.
So to put it in perspective, we're getting quotes for the salt shed roof that was damaged by the wind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I'd say what, 60-70% of the DPW garage roof. And
Yeah.
those are coming in between 40 and 60,000. So
Yeah, I was guessing 40, right?
and it's a much less complicated roof.
Sure.
It's
Crazy.
It's never what you think it's going to cost. And honestly, that mitigation system, I'm worried about the number there. I think it might be double that, and then we'd have a real problem. But
Well, then we install half the mitigation system and tell them those are the bays that they get to fire up and work on.
Yeah.
You can't do twice the need. I mean, there are only like 5 systems out there, and they're not cheap. Usually,
I mean, either we get a surprise this year, or we're gonna get a surprise next year, right?
Right.
well, I mean,
Something.
if we defer everything, as Ryan says, we're going to get a nut like we can't believe for next year.
No, I understand.
mean-
Where I'm going though with this here is that the $26,000 that we're putting in here, they come back and they may say, nope, sorry, it's going to cost you so much more. And
True.
we may have to compromise and say, well, in that case, as you were saying, Bill, we'll go with half a system, which is still better than none.
Right.
And next year we'll do, the other half, but we are at least addressing, even though it's partially, would still be addressing part of the problem.
Right.
I just personally do not see how the mini excavator can be justified this year. I mean, it is an inconvenience. It can become a lot more efficient. It is, however, an item that there are mechanisms around it. It's not the ideal, but again, it's a very difficult year, and we just need to be able to realize that, and we need to be able to work with what we have.
I think that's called a want, not a need.
Exactly.
I would say in defense of this entire capital plan, it's all pretty necessary. Unfortunately, we just don't have the resources. So.
Oh yeah. Well, you see, last year we were very fortunate to have additional budgets and maybe work with higher numbers. And this year, really, we got to sharpen our pencils.
Yeah, the final hit from the audit numbers, as far as I can read it, was 180,000 to our free cash off of COVID. So then you're talking the ability to fund the majority of these requests without, I wouldn't say without worry, but within our framework. So
Can you take us to the bottom line with the exhaust mitigation in?
130, let's call it around number 140, right?
Right. Well, the cruiser's going to come in less than 50. So we're going to trim that down. I mean, ideally, we're looking at 135, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, this could be 45 if you turn in.
With the trade-in.
There you go. And the chief didn't give us a quote on the replacement pickup truck. What's he's carrying 45 or 50?
Yep.
That's a real number.
Okay. So he's getting a plow with that and everything included?
Have it
46.
here.
Yeah, I saw the spec sheet. It included all that.
Okay.
Are you seeing the Word document?
Yep.
So it's a new truck, which makes sense because it's only about 10,000 more, which is real money, but
I think it's an F-350 instead of a 250 too.
yep. And then it has, they're going to use some of their brush fund account to upgrade it a little bit.
Yep. And then the turnout gear. I mean, it's crazy to even attempt to put a washing station and tight tank next to the existing station. That's just nuts.
I agree. I think we need to bite that one.
The only thing that stinks about it, and I agree, we need to, again, health and safety is important for our guys, but you can only use this gear for so long. So it's not like even if it's barely used, they can use
Right.
it longer. So it's still going to be thrown away in 10 years,
Right.
regardless. But,
Hmm.
it is what it is.
I mean, but that's health, safety, and welfare
Right.
too, because it's laden with carcinogens, and we can't really defer that
Right.
until we move to a new station or we accommodate them with a washer.
Okay.
But even you pointed out the cost savings of that be a long time to recuperate.
Well, I didn't realize they were spending $17,000. I mean, you double that number and you're already there with your tight tank and your washing machine and your water treatment. And then whatever gear they have is good for 10 years without question.
Right.
But we don't want to invest that next to the existing station because you can't recoup that elsewhere. You can't move it too easily. You can move the washer, the treatment system, but not a floor drain holding tank.
So a holding tank would be 15,000, huh? To dig a hole and put a concrete tank in.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
It's about $3 to $4 a gallon. And then they got to pump it at $2,500 a year.
Mm.
$1 a gallon, 50
Right.
cents a gallon.
All right. Ryan, as far as the DPW, the septic tank, do you want to move that out to the furthest line? Because it didn't sound like that it was anything that Travis really even thought was necessary. Maybe put it at 2026 as just a placeholder.
Well, guys, the other thing is you can do a septic system inspection under Title V for about $1,500. It's the cost of pumping the septic tank. And we can get an honest to God feel for that, whether that system's going to continue or not. It's not a big line item to have a formal inspection. I do the septic system inspections and those kind of things. So maybe we carry $1,500, $2,000 for an inspection in a year or two.
Okay. It's an idea.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, and design on the roof too. or at least some type of quote.
Yeah.
Because that might be able to push too, but we'll, not that we want to, but we gotta have options.
So if everyone's comfortable with this plan, Ryan, you need a vote on this tonight, right? You should have a vote. Is that right?
Yeah, is there any other changes you'd want to make to the 5-year outlook?
Did you add the inspection in there?
Or you saying for next year, or?
Yeah. Or 2 years? Or this year?
I honestly think we can fit it in the budget this year, but it doesn't hurt to put it on the plan.
And actually, the cost is below what the capital planning mantra calls for anyway.
Yeah, I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but I think the selectmen would support doing that to further the capital plan if there's room in the budget in for 21. So,
Okay, then I'd
Well-
like to keep it out. And that being said, I'd like to move that we propose to the Board of Selectmen the capital plan as presented currently.
Any second on that?
This is Francois Steiger. I'm seconding the motion.
All right. All those in favor? Bill? Yes.
Aye.
Michael? Yes.
Steiger, Francois, aye.
Chuck, yes.
Okay. Unanimous.
yeah, I can write up a draft for you to review at one more meeting, just to finalize that plan.
Okay.
Ryan, thanks for your guidance and your input.
All right, so now you just got to talk about the big one. I need your guidance.
Oh,
So Bill, when we were discussing last week, we were kind of talking more about the plan for a public safety building. And one of the things we wanted your input was, we were talking about, police station only, police and fire station. And, one of the things that came up, which we think you remember saying, was the biggest cost of a fire station or any of this is the bay. Is that correct?
Apparatus bay, yeah.
So the rest of the administrative suites are small money compared to the bay.
Well, what we've been doing, like we did in Ware, was we did and a lot of departments going this way. We did a pre-manufactured building for the apparatus bay, and then we attached it to a stick-built building for the administration, housing, police, and fire. And that seems to be the way it's going. I mean, a pre-manufactured building is a 40-year building, not a 60-year building, whereas a stick-built or structural steel is a 60-plus year building. But in Hubbardston, maybe we'd make it last, maybe we wouldn't, but you might be able to get it. It's, when we did the senior center, we deliberately left space for a public safety facility, and we actually had an architect design it. It was a horrible design, but we had one. But yeah, I mean, it's the truck bays that's gonna cost the amount of money, because currently I think our bays are maybe 10 feet wide and the doors are maybe 10 feet tall, and you got to have 12 to 14 foot tall doors, because currently engine one was a custom and it cost us a ton of money. And we don't want custom anymore. Plus, you need to have 4 feet on either side of a truck that's unimpeded. You can't have gear racks. You can't have hoses. You can't have anything next to a truck. They need to be able to jump onto the truck and respond. Plus, these exhaustive evacuation systems are required. It's not an option when you're spending that amount of money, new construction. So we're looking 6+ if we're looking for police and fire, and we're looking at 5 and change if we're looking at just fire, maybe a little bit less if we're not giving them any kind of realistic housing. But the site that we had for the senior center has a well, and it has really good septic, because we chose that site deliberately because it has septic, it has well capacity. We could put a senior center on there as well as a public safety facility, all on the same site, if we really had the ability to do so. But when we do public safety facilities, we always say you do a police station first because they're the most hated people in town. And the police station with the ambulance are the most loved people in town. So you always prioritize the police station to inform people that once the police are in, you get your fire station after. If you're going to want a public safety facility, then politically, it works well.
Yeah, I feel like the way people think about the buildings here is public safety, which would be police and fire, town hall, and senior center. I don't necessarily feel like the years we've been working on this that people separate. We need a police station or a fire station. I think people look at it as the same, as the accommodating both. And I hate to, in my own personal opinion, I hate to piecemeal it where we do a police first and then try to go back for fire because, they're both in dire need. And again, we're going back to, we're renting space in Breezy Hills. We have a fire station that really isn't up to code and falling apart. So I have always been of the mindset, and still am, that we should try to pursue a police fire station at one time. I think long term will be cheaper if we do construction for both rather than trying to do police station and then add a fire bay and fire station, 5 years down the line. And it's again another ask for people. We've already spent a couple million. Now we're going to come back and ask again. I'd rather say this is our cost for public safety.
Well, I mean, our police station doesn't need cells because we have Rutland. So we just really need administrative, locker room,
Offices,
day
things
room,
like that.
and then
Yeah.
response. Yeah, it's not a highfalutin station unless they decide to add cells. And even then, cells are not over the top when you're starting to add all the dollars up.
So I like to do money context here. So I did prepare you a long-term capital costs projection. So what you're talking about here is if you did a public safety build, call it whatever you want, if it's just police, if it's both. What are you saying, Bill, that the cost would be in your estimation to do it? Nothing extravagant, but enough for a solution for a public safety building?
6+.
So it's 6+. I have been working with the USDA. We would qualify for a 40-year low interest loan, which would bring these costs here per annual cost would be about $250,000, $250,000. So that would require a debt service payment of $136 per average household being a $280,000 house in Hubbardston. So if we needed 6 million, 6 to 8 million, you're seeing the numbers here. So 4 million would be 92 average house, 6 would be 136, and then 8 million would be 181 to the average tax bill.
About maybe $150, if you'd say a $7 million build, let's say.
Yeah, that's a good estimate. So that would be 40 years of that tax increase. So pretty much a 2-generation tax increase.
I mean, it is what it is. We need the facilities,
Not going to get cheaper.
No,
No.
no, for sure.
One thing we did discuss,
Dramatically more expensive.
just for money purposes. So you would need solutions for senior town offices, et cetera. And I would personally agree with the stepped approach to this to try and get something done to solve a problem. But there is the potential for one-time revenue from certain businesses in town, like marijuana. Comes to mind that it's not going to be a forever source of money, but you could potentially solve the next problem with if you use that money wisely. And then there's that borrowing we keep talking about. So the borrowing space from the roads project that comes off. So you could either dedicate that to the next solution or the budget or the long-term capital and use the quote unquote marijuana money, if it exists, for that one-time solution that's after this one. But any way you break down the current scenario, there needs to be a tax increase somewhere to pay for something. Otherwise, the other dominoes aren't going to fall. And I'm not sure that that's going to be popular to hear, but there's no way to do it without attacking one of the problems with some type of tax increase. And that's going to be the biggest hurdle.
But
Yep.
I think people would be more likely to want to borrow money for a building, like a public safety building, over borrowing money to pay normal costs. This is something that the town has needed for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, from my time on the select board, that's what I used to hear from people as we were trying to get a senior center was, I won't support that, but I'll support a public safety building. That was almost uniformly across the board from people I spoke to over the years. So I think people get that. I mean, you're not gonna be able to build a public safety building within our budget. There's just, and people get it. But I think you're right, Ryan. I think, saying that, we're taking out a mortgage to build this. This is what it's going to cost. This is what we need to house our equipment and everything. And then use the marijuana money for, make that known that we're going to use the marijuana money for renovation of the Slade building, which then opens up the next domino of, state funding for the library. So, we spend the mortgage up front, get some buildings, and we open a lot up after that. So what does the select board exactly want to know from us? What we would support, or how we would fund it?
So they're looking to act on the next step. And, there is one here if you want to ask, but they're looking for the next recommendation. So ideally, from what I've been able to gather from our select board, they want this capital plan to include your recommendation on what to do next with the municipal building project. So if I'm hearing you correctly, the public safety building would be the next target. So perhaps a write-up of how all of this fits into a puzzle in your mind, and a timeline or a recommendation to do the next thing, which is, maybe start to put together a timeline for requesting that residents support a public safety building, or whatever it is that you conclude you want to do.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Should we take a vote on support of a public safety building, or how do you guys want to handle it on the committee?
Does something like this require a vote? If it does, then we'll take a vote.
I don't know if it necessarily requires a vote, but it might show, if we took a vote and, put that over the select board that, the capital planning committee voted to recommend a public safety building as the next step, I think would look good. I don't think it requires a vote for a recommendation.
But we're not giving any additional details in terms of the either 4 or 6 or 8 billion. It's just simply public safety is what you're saying, right, Michael?
Right. Well, I would say when use Bill's estimate, at around $7 million for a cost.
Okay. I would say that makes sense. I mean, it is our role here to provide that kind of guidance to the select board, and I'd say that from our perspective, we should do that.
Okay. So we'll make a recommendation then. So we'll need for recommend building of a public safety building at or around $7 million to be funded by 40-year borrowing.
Would at this point, I'm even leave the dollar number out because it really needs to just be looked at overall from a finance perspective. I think that if the priorities that we have here, the public safety building at this point should be the priority, and that there needs to be discussions in terms of what the true alternatives are here. Either you do it as a police department / fire department, or only fire department. We don't know that yet, and I quite frankly think that we haven't had enough of a discussion on that. And I tend to agree with Bill that putting the police and the fire makes a lot of sense. So I'd like to leave it as generic as possible and simply say, out of all of the options that we have here, public safety building is the one thing that makes sense for the town. We need to look at this here. At this point in time, we've explored ranges of cost and the impact that it has, and they range from 4 to 8 million. And this is the additional free cash that would have to be required, and this is the annual additional tax impact. And it's up to the select board to take that baton that we're handing to them and refine it.
All right. So just make a motion of support for a public safety building to the select board.
That is what I would
Okay,
suggest at this point in time.
okay, sounds good. So you want to make that motion, Francois?
I will make that motion. The motion is basically to provide the select board with a recommendation that public safety building be the first item for them to consider on the long-term capital investment with the information that has been added here by Ryan in terms of the projection from a depth exclusion to the costs at different stages.
All right, a second on that?
No, second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye, Francois.
Yes for Michael?
Yes for Chuck.
Yes, Murray.
Ryan, is this what you needed?
Yeah, so I'm looking at my notes, and one more thing, you guys had a fruitful discussion about what to do with that expiring debt, which I like to talk about. And I see in my notes that you had mentioned looking to fund the the fire truck and the ambulance potentially, if that's necessary and recommended, with that debt. So to keep those in the operating budget. Rather than seek debt exclusions or use that money for some other purpose. So I would love to see if we can finalize that discussion and include that in the recommendation as well, because I think that will springboard the select board to make some longer term decisions to include this municipal building project.
Yeah, so Bill, just to fill you in, last week we had discussed the road projects from 2013 is going to be coming off in 2023. And that's what, $200 and some $1,000 a year in debt service. So the discussions were, do we put that back in the general budget, which isn't a good idea because that's money that we're not using now. So we had thought last week that, you know, with the fire department's big needs coming up with another truck and with an ambulance, rather than asking for another debt exclusion, which we probably will be asking for in that time frame for a building, to put those big items into that debt service. And pay those off over, 5 years, whatever it takes to pay those off. Okay. So that sounds, I think we're all in agreement with that. So I guess we'll make another motion then for recommending using the roads debt service to pay for fire truck and fire ambulance in the future. So anybody want a motion on that?
I'll make the motion.
All right, Chuck, second.
Francois Steiger seconds the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Murray, aye.
Francois Steiger, aye.
Michael, yeah, aye.
Chuck, aye.
All right, so motion passes.
Okay, I think I need about 2 weeks to put together a draft CIP plan for you to review. Is there an appetite to meet on the 22nd? I know normally we wouldn't do that because of holidays, but my holidays look pretty boring this year, so.
Yeah, mine are looking pretty boring too. I'm okay with the 22nd.
What are you putting in our stockings, Ryan?
Oh,
Hopefully more free cash.
Sure,
7:30, same time?
please, yes.
Okay,
Okay, and I'll go through a draft plan. You can make any edits, adjustments, any final recommendations. And then if we can approve a plan, that would be presented to the Board of Selectmen the first week in January, which means we hit our time frame, which is good.
all right.
Been really productive. I appreciate everyone's effort.
And these, I mean, in-person meetings are fun, but the Zoom meetings aren't too bad.
I agree.
Yeah, makes it easier. All right, so we'll close the meeting at motion to adjourn at 8:57.
I have a motion here to adjourn the meeting.
All right, any second?
Second.
Chuck, so all in favor? Michael, yes?
Steiger, aye.
Chuck,
Chuck,
yes.
yes. Okay, motion adjourned at 8:57.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.